Chapter 1571. Yi Zue's expression became even more pained. Beads of sweat continuously formed on his forehead and fell to the ground with a thud. The ground was already wet. He didn't even notice that he had long exceeded the 10-count time limit. He was just completely immersed in this choice. If I don't choose, I will die. If I choose father and mother, I will still die. But if I choose myself, father and mother will die. At this moment, Yi Zue was muttering like a maniac. His gaze became more and more frenzied, and his expression more and more intense. That strange man stared intently, a smug smile slowly appearing at the corners of his lips. It's about time. He had seen quite a number of people before, and there was no lack of people with high cultivation. But in the end, without exception, they all chose to be selfish and chose himself. This little one was a cruel and vicious pugilist who killed without batting an eyelid. There would definitely be no accidents as to how he would choose in the final round. He would definitely make the correct choice. At this thought, that strange man's tongue unconsciously hung out and greedily licked his lips. As long as this little one made the choice, the heavenly demon's origin would be formed, and he would immediately swallow half of it to make up for the damage to his demonic soul. Although this little one's strength was weak, he could at least make up for 1% of it, right? As long as he continued like this, there would come a day when he would be able to fully recover and even improve. Because in this world, no one could stop him, and no one could compete with him for resources. Although this was a garbage dump, he could change qualitatively due to quantity and improve infinitely. When that time came, he would be able to go wherever he wanted to go. At this thought, he accelerated the stimulation of Yi Zue's soul. Although this action required him to use his origin energy, as long as he succeeded, the benefits would be considerable. This was the only way for the heavenly demons to strengthen themselves since time immemorial. It was also the strongest method. Suddenly, Yi Zue raised his head abruptly. Blood spurted out of his 7 orifices at the same time. He roared into the sky. Ah! A cruel smugness appeared in the strange man's eyes. He knew that Yi Zue had already made his final choice. Moreover, the space between Yi Zue's brows was already filled with black aura. Obviously, he had correctly chosen himself. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any signs of black aura gathering. Humans were indeed selfish. The strange man thought mockingly. His mood relaxed. He removed the seal on his spirit and was about to move forward. However, right at this moment a sudden change occurred. The black aura between Yi Zue's brows dissipated abruptly. Almost in the blink of an eye, it completely dissipated and disappeared without a trace. The strange man was taken aback. Before he could realize what was going on, Yi Zue had already bellowed, "My parents cannot die. I can't die, I can't die. You can't die no matter what." He roared with all his strength. "I'll die, I'll die. I'll die, I'll die. Ah!" The demonic chi in his heart veins and between his eyebrows receded like a tide. The strange man cried out in shock. He felt that his demonic soul had been hit hard by the demonic chi that had suddenly chosen to retreat. He had just relaxed his mind, but now, something unexpected had happened. He had just removed the seal on his divine soul, and was instantly hit. In a trance, he suffered a great backlash. His vision turned black, and a gurgling sound came from his throat. A mouthful of black blood came out. Fucking hell! How could this be? How could this be? The eccentric was furious. This was definitely not the result that the strange man had hoped for. Ah! Yi Zue roared. The moment he made his final choice, the surrounding demonic chi became chaotic. The strange man had suddenly suffered a backlash, and the demonic formation had turned from stable to chaotic. Yi Zue's mind suddenly regained clarity, and there was only one thing in his mind. I want to go back and see my parents. He suddenly leaped to his feet and shouted, "Father! Mother!" He spread his legs and ran away. In an instant, he actually broke out of the encirclement of the demonic chi and dashed out of the dense forest at lightning speed. Although his mind was in a mess, he had already run away without a trace. The cooked duck had actually flown away. The duck that had clearly been placed on the table and was about to enter his mouth suddenly came back to life and flew away. The strange man was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Oh, not almost, but he was already vomiting blood. His eyes were filled with inconceivable shock, as well as incredulity, that was so intense that it almost solidified. He flew into a rage out of humiliation. Fucking hell, what kind of shitty thing was this? Not only had his plan failed, he had even suffered an inexplicable backlash. In that instant, he couldn't stop the other party from leaving at all, and could only watch helplessly as the demonic formation failed, and the little one flew away. What the fuck was this? How did this happen? Was this little one still a fledgling demon? This was an unexpected turn of events. This little one actually ran away, and he even had to stay here and vomit blood. Fuck. Fuck. The strange man felt as if his intestines had been twisted into 70 or 80 pieces. Finally, he couldn't help but spit out the most classic curse since time immemorial. Could it be that I've actually seen a ghost today? I was clearly infinitely close to success. Otherwise, I wouldn't have relaxed my mental control and prepared to accept the results, only to unexpectedly suffer from a backlash. The strange man scratched his head, looking depressed. But what the fuck is going on? If it had been someone else, for example, the kind who had always been chivalrous and righteous, if this kind of demonic formation failed, then so be it. There was nothing to say about it. Their natures naturally countered each other, so it was rare for it to succeed. But who was this Yi Zue? He was a fledgling demon who cultivated the heavenly demonic art. Could it be that those who practiced demonic arts in this heaven's continent were actually good people? If not, why did it fail? It was really incomprehensible, unreasonable, and unbelievable. Also, not only did the demonic heart transformation ritual fail, he could even break through the demonic formation and run away on his own, with just that little bit of cultivation. How was this possible? This heavenly demon strange man felt that his thoughts weren't enough. There were too many impossibilities, even if they did happen. If not for the fact that Yi Zue's cultivation was really insignificant, the strange man would even suspect that Yi Zue was actually the incarnation of some super heavenly demon playing games with him here. This is really fucking amazing. He muttered to himself. This one here can't also be that kind of person, right? After thinking for a while, he still decided to regulate his breathing first. If this also causes a backlash once, no way. This time, I must wait until I've absorbed the origin energy before I release the mental seal. If it fails again, then there's really no justice in this world. After the heavenly demon strange man regulated his breathing for a while and recovered slightly, he came to the Dharma Supreme with a very cautious attitude. To be honest, the Dharma Supreme was definitely not the best choice. Yes, the level of the Dharma Supreme's demonic power was much higher than Yi Zue's. If he activated his demonic origin, the effect would definitely be much greater than Yi Zue's. However, the Dharma Supreme's strength was also much higher than Yi Zue's. Therefore, the potential danger was naturally much greater than Yi Zue's. However, the Dharma Supreme was already the heavenly demon strange man's last hope, especially at this moment after the Aunt Yi Zue's unexpected counterattack. The heavenly demon strange man's actual strength could be said to be invincible in this world. Usually, it was not much different from playing with the Dharma Supreme. However, the injuries on his body had already exceeded the limits of what an ordinary person could endure. To put it bluntly, his life could be in danger at any moment. If he couldn't get support from the heavenly demon's origin energy, then he could only wait for death in this heavily injured place. The Dharma Supreme had already been waiting for quite some time. Due to the demonic fog, he couldn't hear any movement on the other side, and didn't know how Yi Zue was doing at the moment. Although the two sides were very close to each other, he was completely in the dark. This was the characteristic of the higher-level heavenly demon demonic power. Even if the heavenly demon strange man's life was in danger, and could even die at any time, the heavenly demon's special ability he was using could still completely block the Dharma Supreme's senses. The temporary relative difference in reality couldn't exceed the absolute difference in instincts. The Dharma Supreme's determination was not something Yi Zue could compare to. He didn't care what would happen to Yi Zue. He only persisted in his own choice. Until the last step. When he heard the heavenly demon strange man's voice again, the Dharma Supreme opened his eyes slightly. After listening to the rules of the game, the Dharma Supreme's expression changed slightly. This new rule of the game seemed to be within his expectations, but also beyond his expectations. However, the Dharma Supreme still accepted this test calmly. The first to be eliminated, unsurprisingly, was his beautiful wife and concubines. Beautiful wife and concubines are at most a pastime in life. Women are just playthings, pure playthings. If one blocks the other pleasures of life because of women, then one is just a fool. This was the reason for the Dharma Supreme's choice. When he chose to abandon them, he didn't even feel the slightest bit of pain. He made his choice cleanly and neatly. For the second, he gave up on all living beings in the world. For the third, he gave up on commanding the world. From the fourth, the Dharma Supreme finally started to struggle and suffer, just like Yi Zue, because what was left was a strong body, invincible in the world, immortality, supremacy, parents and family, brothers of life and death. No matter which one it was, he didn't want to give it up. The pain that the Dharma Supreme suffered was not inferior to Yi Zue's. Although his cultivation and temperament couldn't be compared to Yi Zue's, this game's punishment was in the illusory realm of the Great Array and targeted his soul and spirit, not his cultivation level. If not for this, with the heavenly demon strange man's current strength, he would have to pay a price to inflict such pain on the Dharma Supreme. Although endless pain was on him, the Dharma Supreme didn't even groan in pain. Even though his mind felt like it was shattering and thousands of needles were piercing him, he didn't make a single sound. Even his face didn't show any signs of malevolence. He was just in so much pain that he was sweating profusely. As time went on, the pain that the Dharma Supreme suffered became more and more severe, gradually exceeding the limit that Yi Zue had previously endured. However, the Dharma Supreme was still able to hold on. This was because his endurance benefited from his temperament and cultivation, and was incomparable to Yi Zue's. The greater the pain, the calmer the Dharma Supreme's expression became. After making his choice, if he succeeded, he would have the body of the heavenly demon and be invincible in the world. If he didn't, he would be reduced to ashes. What was success? Chapter 1572. The almost endless stabbing pain in his mind made the Dharma Supreme feel like he was better off dead. However, his brain was still operating clearly, pondering and considering, making a clear choice to give up. Only with a strong body can I be invincible in the world. Only with invincible in the world can I be the best in the world. Only after I am the best in the world can I think about the problem of immortality. Only after everything is perfect can I take care of my family and my brothers. If one's self is perfect, too much consideration is nothing more than an act of worrying oneself over nothing. It seems like family and brothers are the most unnecessary. No, I am supreme and invincible. What is my ultimate goal? What is it for? Therefore, family and brothers cannot be abandoned. The Dharma Supreme was sweating profusely, still struggling and resisting. The heavenly demon strange being observed calmly. He had completely lost the confidence to win, and was just purely operating the demonic array. Were the people in this world crazy? The ant-like fledgling devil just now was already very unexpected. This one with a higher cultivation level in front of him. Did he not feel pain? Even in the Heaven Palace, there were not many people who could resist this level of pain. What kind of world was this? The only thing that supported the heavenly demon strange being was that the Dharma Supreme was still making a choice, still continuing this game. Remove I am supreme. The Dharma Supreme's eyes were as cold as snow as he finally made a decision. The heavenly demon strange being breathed a sigh of relief. He was really terrified now, and did not dare to talk nonsense. He hurried on with the fifth item, bitterness rising in his heart. Could it be that the people in this world and the Heaven Palace are actually different species, just looking similar? He should have been the first to give up his brothers. In this case, am I going to face failure again? Then I get rid of immortality. Remove invincibility. Now there were only 3 items left. A strong body, family and brothers. The Dharma Supreme's steady breathing finally became heavy. He had chosen here, but he was almost at his limit. He hesitated even longer. Finally, he said hoarsely, remove a strong body. I only keep my family and brothers. I request to keep these 2 items. No more choices. No. I have to make another choice. The heavenly fiend eccentric didn't relax at all. He only felt more and more dejected and disappointed. At this moment, he just wanted to end this embarrassing game as soon as possible. This game that he had been leading and dominating had actually escaped his control again and again. Get rid of the parent clan. The Dharma Supreme closed his eyes. Ever since he had returned to this world, it could be said that he had never cared about his family and loved ones. He had always thought that they were just decorations for his successful life. But when he gave up at this moment, he realized that he had actually put these things at the end of his choice. They were actually more important than his body, strength, and perfection. In the end, when he had to give up, he still felt like his heart was being cut by a knife. His heart seemed to shatter in an instant. However, he never chose to abandon his sworn brother. I've already betrayed you once. I have already abandoned all of you once. This time, no matter what, I will never abandon all of you. Never. Before the Dharma Supreme's eyes, the faces of these brothers seemed to appear one by one. Even though tens of thousands of years had passed, each and every one of them, but they were still so fresh in his memory. I'm sorry. The Dharma Supreme lowered his head sadly. I'm sorry. Brothers, I let all of you down back then. It's my fault. But this time, I've made a new choice. I've finally left all of you at the end, to let all of you accompany me forever. If things could be redone, we would definitely be able to. Live and die together. We would definitely be able to. Live and die together. The Dharma Supreme's eyes were brimming with tears. It's a pity that choices can be made, but life can't be redone. Finally, there's still one last choice. The voice of the heavenly demon strange being rang coldly, with a strong murderous intent. If the Dharma Supreme still made the same choice as Yi Zui in the last choice, then the heavenly demon strange being would choose to kill the Dharma Supreme without hesitation. Even if it was beyond his power, he would still go all out, even if it meant perishing together with the Dharma Supreme in the end. Because there was basically no hope for him anymore. Since that was the case, he might as well let this guy die with him. Last choice. What else is there to choose? The Dharma Supreme, who had always been calm and collected, suddenly flew into a rage. I'm only left with my sworn brother. If I abandon him again, I'll really have nothing left. There's only one option. How do I make a choice? Are you messing with me? No. How can you have nothing left? Don't you still have your life? The heavenly demon's strange being's cold voice seemed to be devoid of any emotion. He said slowly and cruelly, Last choice, do you want your life? Or do you want your brother's lives? Last choice, you have to make a choice. The Dharma Supreme's vision turned black. Suddenly, he let out a loud roar and spat out a mouthful of blood. The earlier choices had always been easy for him. Even if he had hesitated, once he made a choice, he was still resolute. However, when it came to the last option, the Dharma Supreme suddenly had a feeling of rebirth of life and turning back time. It was as if he had returned to the heaven-mending cave. Chapter 1573. When the Dharma Supreme thought of this, his vision suddenly turned dark and his head started to hurt intensely. The pain this time was as if he was being sliced into pieces, surpassing all the cruel punishments that came at him together. It was as if he was in the 18 levels of hell, where all kinds of punishment methods came at him at the same time. Ah! The Dharma Supreme held his head with both hands and roared at the sky. His expression was ferocious, no longer as calm as before. He roared continuously. He had been very calm and composed all along, but the agitation at this moment was much more painful and intense than Yi Zui's earlier. Make your choice quickly. If you don't, you will lose the chance to choose. The heavenly demon eccentric's low voice rang out. I choose. The Dharma Supreme panted heavily. His whole body was sweating profusely, and he was on the verge of collapsing. Quick. If you don't choose, we will die together. The Dharma Supreme tore at his own hair in pain, and finally gave up. His whole body went limp as if there were no bones in it. His eyes were lifeless. I'm sorry. Since he had already betrayed them once, then, what's wrong with betraying them again? I persevered this time and didn't betray them, but will they forgive me just like that? We are all people who are not allowed to have flaws. As long as there is once, There will always be a not. The Dharma Supreme smiled bitterly, but 2 drops of tears slowly fell from the corners of his eyes. I didn't expect that when I had a chance to restart my life and let you choose again, I would still choose to betray you. I still don't want to die. I really just don't want to die. Can you all forgive me? I choose to live on by myself. The Dharma Supreme's eyes widened, his consciousness completely broken down. He stared blankly at the sky, as if there were still 8 brothers looking at him. The innermost one injects the power of the spirit to give that one a chance to live. After a series of painful struggles, the Dharma Supreme finally repeated the choice he had made back then. If they had all died that time, it would have been fine. But if one of them wanted to go out and seek justice, it would be the same for any one of them. But the Dharma Supreme still chose himself. This could have allowed the other brothers to accept this chance of survival. But he didn't. This was where his pain lay. This time he was worried. Even if he had repented, he had been stubborn for 30,000 years. How could his brother forgive him? Since I can't forgive him, then, what's the point of persevering? Since he had already been sentenced, there was no turning back. After making this choice, the Dharma Supreme felt as if his soul had been sucked out of his body. He fell limply to the ground. Then, a surge of pure heavenly demonic energy surged into his mind and into his heart meridians. Chapter 1575. That's why it's hard to understand. If it's not inevitable, why do they have to compromise? It doesn't seem to make sense. Emotianji laughed in a deep voice and said, "Moreover, all of you have seen Dukyu's special ability. He can make flowers bloom in the cold winter. He can also make elixirs that have been growing for thousands of years mature, in just a few years, or even a few months. His cultivation may not be considered heaven-defying, but this special ability of his race is the best in the world. It's not an exaggeration to say that he is the best in the world. As for us, we're going to charge up to the heavenly imperial court in the future. Chu Yang has the unique ability to fuse heavy pills. Dukyu can accelerate the growth of all elixirs for Chu Yang's use. If Dukyu and Chu Yang work together, what will the result be?" Mo Tianji asked calmly. Mo Qingwu and Mo Lei gasped at the same time. One could fuse heavy pills that could bring the dead back to life and increase cultivation. The other could accelerate the growth of all elixirs. If the 2 of them worked together, if the 2 of them really worked together, it was equivalent to an irresistible concept. They had a treasure trove with them. As long as the brothers prepared 1 or 2 pills before every battle, everyone would be equivalent to Rue Butong of the Phoenix clan. They couldn't be killed or destroyed. This was the legendary ultimate luxurious dream combination. A legendary combination that even myths and miracles couldn't describe. This kind of combination is enough to make anyone and any force in the world jealous. It's the same even in the Heaven Imperial Court. However, this result is contrary to Dukyu's lifelong dream. He has never thought of going up there. Therefore, this legend cannot be realized. But if Chu Yang helps him find the spring of life and help him restore the city of elves, it's equivalent to a new lease of life for the elves. To Dukyu, the only elf, it's an even bigger favor that can never be fully repaid. Even if we don't talk about their friendship, just this favor alone is enough for Dukyu to serve him for life. If Chu Yang goes up to the Heavenly Imperial Court, what will Dukyu do? What can he do? Are we just going to watch our benefactor fight a bloody battle without doing anything? While he enjoys the worry-free environment that his benefactor and brother created for him. With Dukyu's personality, how can he do that? But if he follows Chu Yang, what about Dukyu's lifelong wish? He still has so many things to worry about. When Mo Tianji said this, Mo Qinggu and Mo Lei sighed in unison. Yes, this was indeed a problem. It was difficult to satisfy both sides. He was in a dilemma. It was an unsolvable dead knot. Therefore, this matter has become a dead knot in a dilemma. Mo Tianji said in a profound manner. How can Chu Yang make things difficult for Dukyu? This breadth of mind is something that I can't compare to in my whole life. He looked warmly at Mo Qinggu. Perhaps you didn't realize that since a few days ago, when Chu Yang looked for you, I didn't object at all. You praised him without restraint in front of me. And I wasn't angry anymore. It's just because he's worthy of your reliance, worthy of your praise, and worthy of your love. He's even more worthy of my, Mo Tianji's recognition. Mo Qingwu's face turned red. Instantly, she felt both embarrassed and happy. There was also an indescribable sense of pride. This is Chu Yang, the man that I like. He's so different. Also, between us brothers, it's precisely because we realized the essence of this matter that we became more united and more cohesive. Mo Tianji shook his head and said, Our brothers have always been very good, but there are two people, namely Ao Shiyun and Xie Danqiong, who have always been a little incompatible. Although it's just a little, there's always a gap. The foundation of the relationship between the two of them and the rest of us is slightly weaker. Fundamentally speaking, it's just fate. The fate of the tribulation is irresistible. The dragon and the phoenix race are indispensable. That's why they became one of the tribulations by chance. But after all, it's not as deep as Chu Yang's Du Xing and Wu Shang's, who fought all the way from the lower three heavens. But after this matter, that feeling has shrunk infinitely. In these few days, it's almost completely disappeared. Perhaps today or tomorrow, that little bit of incompatibility will also completely disappear. Mo Tianji said, It's because of Chu Yang's actions. Perhaps Chu Yang himself hasn't realized this subtle change, but I've already clearly noticed it. His charisma, doing things honestly, and treating people with good intentions, unintentionally and unintentionally, good karma will naturally form. So this matter is also of great benefit to us. Some things don't need to be said because everyone understands. But since you've asked today, I have to explain it clearly. Mo Tianji said warmly, Because you can only ask me about this matter. You can't ask Chu Yang or Dong Wushang. If you ask, they'll be very unhappy. Mo Tianji secretly added another sentence in his heart. Perhaps Chu Yang won't care about explaining because of his love for Xiao Wu. But Dong Wushang will definitely fly into a rage. Because he'll think that Mo Leer's suspicion is blasphemous to the relationship between his brothers. Of course, facing Mo Qingwu and Mo Leer, even if there was such a difference, Mo Tianji wouldn't say it out loud. Otherwise, his head would really be kicked by a donkey. Mo Tianji leisurely walked out of the room and continued to participate in the negotiation and battle of words with Dukyu. Mo Qingwu and Mo Leer were speechless. The two of us have thought too simply. However, everyone here clearly knew that. Under this relaxed appearance, there was an incomparable cautiousness hidden. Everyone's nerves were stretched taut. It could be said that this was the first time that all the brothers had attacked with all their might. The first time that all of them had gathered together and used a prearranged formation to deal with an enemy together. An unusually strong enemy. Everyone raised their cultivation to the limit. They were ready to attack with all their might at any time. In the face of an unpredictable and powerful enemy, who would dare to be the slightest bit careless. If they were careless, not only would they be in danger of dying, but their brothers' lives would also be sent to this place. In a quiet place, Chu Yang and the others had already entered 200 miles into the depths of the dense forest. However, they still didn't discover any abnormalities. They couldn't sense any aura or traces of the enemy at all. However, that mysterious and strange pressure was getting heavier and heavier. It was precisely because of this heavy pressure that everyone's vigilance didn't decrease, but instead increased. They became even more cautious and careful to prevent any negligence. The dense forest is vast. Hiding a person is like hiding a needle in a haystack. Do you want to try another direction? Dukyu said in a deep voice. No need. Mo Tianji was in the middle. He stood in front of Mo Qingwu and said slowly, Such a strong and resolute existence will come and fight us as long as he detects our hostility. He won't avoid the provocation of a group of ants. Everyone nodded slowly. Another 15 miles of space receded under their feet. Suddenly, without any warning, right in front of everyone, where Chu Yang and Dukyu were, a black smoke that was darker than ink suddenly rose. An unusually strong and indescribable evil aura suddenly spread out. The black smoke filled the air. It swept towards everyone with an unimaginable and astonishing speed. A faint shadow could be faintly seen in the midst of the black smoke. Kukukuku. A series of eerie and strange laughter rang out. 1,000 mountains and 10,000 waters spirit moon. Dukyu, who had the highest cultivation among the group, was the first to make a move. Suddenly, an incomparably bright moonlight appeared in the dark forest. Dukyu was also the first to pounce out. The moonlight instantly transformed into a sharp longsword and violently slashed out. In Chu Yang's group, Dukyu's cultivation was the highest. He had already reached the level of supreme martial artist. The enemy's strength was difficult to estimate. No matter what, Dukyu had to be the first to block and create a gap for the others to deal with the enemy and counterattack. Almost at the same time, Chu Yang didn't say a word. The Calamity Sword suddenly appeared in his hand. The moment it appeared, it had already violently exploded with bright light. For some things, such as a battle with the extraterrestrial demons in the future, it will not work without enough power. That is indeed necessary. In the afternoon, just as I woke up, my wife came in with a very nervous expression and said, "There's something difficult to do." I asked, "What's the matter?" My wife said, "Our car broke the rules." I immediately smiled. I thought it was a big deal. Isn't it just a deduction of points? The fine won't be too much, just pay attention in the future. My wife cried, "It's not just a little." I was startled. How many times? My wife said timidly, "It's not just a few times. It's dozens of times. Also, the traffic laws have changed. Finding a person won't work. The deduction of points can only be done 3 times. I was dumbfounded. Dozens of times? How many points is this? How much is it? My wife said, "It's a total of 14 points. I immediately vomited blood and fainted. I shouted, "Fuck, how many days have you been driving? 14 points. A driver's license is only 12 points. What should I do?" My wife said weakly, "It's precisely because I don't know what to do that I'm looking for you." I slammed my head on the keyboard. Oh my god, 14 points. I'll do this again this afternoon. I called my comrade at the Gongji Security Bureau and told him about this matter. My comrade said, "Easy. How many times did you break the rules?" "I'll do it." I said, "Not many, just a little more points, 14 points." My comrade then became mute. After a while he shouted, "Replace your prodigal wife." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. At the moment, there was nothing I could do. I went to check. They were all speeding in the same place. And they didn't follow the rules when making turns. When I asked, my wife widened her eyes and said, "How is that possible?" I sighed helplessly. The whole of Laiwu knows that there's a police car that stops at the bottom of the big hill every day to test for speeding. But you actually exceeded the speed limit at the same place 20 times. I've already lectured my wife for a few hours. What should I do now? If I had known, I would have driven. Although my skills are not good, at least I wouldn't have exceeded the speed limit. Can't I drive as fast as a bull? Chapter 1583. Chu Yang's consciousness power encompassed 2 lifetimes. Naturally, it was different from ordinary people. Previously, it didn't show its power because there was a gap between his 2 lifetimes consciousness, a flaw. That gap was Mo Qing Wu. If it couldn't be resolved, the 2 lifetimes consciousness wouldn't be able to fuse together. At most, they could only work together against external forces. But now, not only had Mo Qing Wu found it, she had also made up for the regrets of her previous life. The gap between the 2 lifetimes consciousness had been filled. The 2 lifetimes consciousness power naturally blended together perfectly, and even improved greatly. In addition, Chu Yang had coincidentally devoured the divine soul of the first tribulation sword master at the Lake of Despair. His divine soul was unparalleled in the Chongtian continent, surpassing both ancient and modern times. It was just that the soul power couldn't be used in this heavenly layer continent. There was almost no chance to train the soul power. No matter how strong the soul power was, it couldn't be used. It was like Chu Yang had a mountain of gold, but there was no room for him to spend it. Perhaps Chu Yang had an invincible divine technique. As long as he used it, he would be invincible in the world. But Chu Yang didn't have the opportunity to use this divine technique. He had obtained something, but had no use for it. The result was that it was like a pile of loose sand in Chu Yang's body. At this moment, the heavenly demon's tyrannical spirit power, soul power, and willpower had forcefully rushed in without any warning. This was something that no one could tolerate. In such a situation, there were usually only two outcomes. 1. He would be controlled by the heavenly demon, and his own consciousness would dissipate. 2. He would completely expel the external enemy and restore his mind to a clear sky, protecting his sovereignty. This was a matter of life and death. At this critical juncture, Chu Yang's powerful soul power was fully activated for the first time. At the beginning, Chu Yang's divine soul had no room to resist the attack of the heavenly demon's exceptionally pure heavenly demon's divine soul source. Almost at the moment of contact, Chu Yang's divine soul was utterly defeated. His entire divine soul was dangerously close to collapse. This collapse almost made Chu Yang break down completely and become a complete idiot. This was a sign that his soul was about to be completely destroyed. However, as the saying goes, where there is oppression, there is resistance. At this moment, Chu Yang had fallen into an absolute disadvantage. But his stubborn heart hadn't reduced in the slightest. He didn't know how to use his spiritual power to fight against the enemy in his sea of consciousness. However, he clearly knew one thing, and that was to resist. Of course, Chu Yang's consciousness was also different from the sea water. The sea water could not attack or learn. It could only cycle over and over again, repeating its habitual actions. Although Chu Yang's divine soul could not attack, it could learn. And it could learn very quickly. It was so fast that it could scare people to death. Yes, it was so fast that it could scare a demon to death. Feeling the heavenly demon moving freely left and right, Chu Yang's thoughts flashed, as if he had figured out something, and had some enlightenment. Enduring the intense pain in his head, which felt like it was about to explode, Chu Yang began to try to control his own divine soul for the first time. It was important for people to save themselves, to constantly strive for self-improvement, and to have an inextinguishable life force. This process was undoubtedly extremely painful. Moreover, Chu Yang could even feel that even if all the torture in the world were to be concentrated on a person's body at the same time, it might not be as painful as he was at this moment. But Chu Yang still gritted his teeth and persevered. Once he gave up, it was equivalent to giving up on himself, giving up on his lover, giving up on his life. He must not give up. If you were to use this move on others, you might not be able to endure it. But it is wrong to use it on me. Very wrong. Because I have been through hundreds of battles, and have been through hundreds of battles. Back then, when Zi Xieching used torture on me, she would do it more than 10 times a day. Although this move of yours is stronger than that. But it is only SOSO. The corners of Chu Yang's mouth curled up into a sneer, even in such a bad situation. Counterattack. Counterattack. Again and again. Wave after wave of attacks, wave after wave of counterattacks came. The heavenly demon finally realized that something was wrong. At first, it thought that the other party's counterattack was just a last-ditch effort before death. But in the end, it was more and more powerful each time? What was going on? How was this still a last-ditch effort? It was simply a large-scale counterattack, with each wave stronger than the previous one. Didn't this bastard not know how to condense his divine soul? How could it be? Sensing it carefully, the heavenly demon almost vomited blood. The frequency of the other party's movements was exactly the same as what it had done just now. There was no difference at all. What did this mean? This meant that under such circumstances, this young man was actually learning from the old thief, using the old tricks to fight and counterattack. Realizing this, the heavenly demon almost broke down. He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. Wasn't this guy a little too weird? This Lord Heavenly Demon is here to destroy this fellow's divine sense, not to be his freaking teacher. Sensing the other party's counterattack, the Heavenly Demon was filled with a feeling of extreme depression.